Back, you're watching The Nation at 9. Important debate started off by a candidate who won the presidency of the United States of America and is now signing executive order after executive order and making the world think twice. The latest executive order by President Donald J. Trump of the U.S. restricts the entry of many of Indian techies, especially by tightening visa norms, especially the H1B visa, a visa that has been used by techies all over the world, especially in India, to find employment and find a career and chase their version of the American dream. All that now is suspect. There's a lot to be spoken about the H1B visa tightening. Arun Jaitley, the finance minister, is in the US right now. He's met Wilbur Ross, who is the commerce secretary. Remember, Wilbur Ross is somebody who comes from America Inc., if you will. He's one of the old ones of the old globalist order who Trump has chosen to head his commerce department. Can India sway the Wilbur Ross-headed commerce department to somehow let India benefit, at least, if not circumvent, the tightening of the rules? How long will this protectionism continue? So many questions tonight. But first, take a look at the story and the developments of the day. We'll come back with big questions and the panel in just a bit.
We are about to take bold new steps to follow through on my pledge to buy American and hire American.
A clarion call that resonated ominously for India Inc. as US President Donald Trump set about on his visa abuse crackdown, setting in place reforms to tighten the rules of the H1B visa program, making norms stricter for skilled professionals. This is being perceived as Trump's protectionist wall to protect the American worker. The America First mantra has seen its immediate fallout as the Indian IT sector, already cramped fighting battles for revenue and profits, now fears dents in operating margins to start off with. India's third largest software services firm, Wipro, fired a few hundred employees as part of its yearly performance appraisal, raising fears of a bloodbath in the industry, as well as fueling speculation of lower realizations for India's software exports.
As far as the Indian economy is concerned, the impact may not be that great. There will be some, I would say, more subtle changes.
Sensing the obvious churn, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley took up the issue with the US Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross in Washington, D.C. earlier today. The first cabinet-level interaction between India and US since Trump got to the White House. This meeting saw Jaitley strongly reiterating the significant role played by skilled Indian professionals and companies in aiding the US economy.
Basically, an executive order has been signed. Now it has to be acted upon, and as a result of which it would perhaps be expected that there would be legislation. I think it's an internal process in the United States which will unfold on this matter in the coming days and weeks, and we'll keep a very close watch.
Emphasizing that India and the US have maintained strong ties in economics and defense, Jaitley spelt out his expectations clearly. Would the US administration consider this before a final decision is no one's guess right now.
It's largely an outcome of the malaise set into our economy by Raghuram Rajan, of raising interest rates and making people collapse, and that needs to be rectified.
There is always a difference between fundamental solid achievements versus photo opportunities, a lot of press publicity and personal promotion.
While India remains the biggest beneficiary for H1B visas with nearly 70% of the total approvals, Indian professionals get 86% of the total visas issued for computer occupations. With Wipro, Infosys, Tech Mahindra and TCS making up for the bulk of employers, a change in the visa rules could force these companies to increase the American workforce at the expense of Indian employees on site, with a bump in operational costs.
It's not just the US, it is several countries now adopting such measures. We need to have the industry also look at various different ways in which we can, government and the industry can work together on it.
While the Modi government is already on the job seeking a liberalization of rules for trade facilitation and increased services growth, it's the IT sector that faces the chill now. moving towards increased automation and use of artificial intelligence is on the cards for many a IT major. However, it's the Indian IT professional who might soon face a fight to stay relevant. Bureau Inputs, NewsX.
Protectionist Trump bad for India and the Indian IT sector. Big questions tonight. Can the Indian IT sector survive an increasingly protectionist America? That's question number one tonight on The Nation at 9. We also are asking tonight, not just our panel, but the viewers as well, will harsher visa norms multiply pink slips? As we've seen today, Indian IT giant Wipro firing nearly 500 of their employees. Is the techie dream now, especially the Indian techie dream, the American dream, now turned into a nightmare because of the protectionist policies that the Trump administration is most likely going to follow? And big question number 4 tonight on The Nation at 9, is the globalist order of yore now on the wane as increasingly the world and developed countries move into a protectionist path? And last question that I'm asking tonight on The Nation at 9 is, after the US, New Zealand, Australia, who's going to be next? Are there going to be more and more nations who will tighten their norms? Remember, Sweden has tightened immigration norms. Although they're not connected to jobs directly, that is still an indication if the most liberal country in the world decides to tighten their immigration norm. That's the world we live in. And tonight on the panel, we'll be joined by P.N. Vijay, spokesperson of the BJP, also an economist. Also with us, Professor Madhav Nalapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian. Raymond Vickery joins us. He's a former Assistant Secretary of Commerce, Trade and Development. That happened under President Bill Clinton. Joins us via Skype. Raymond, thank you for joining us. I'll start with you. Is this protectionist streak going to extend? I understand Arun Jaitley, the finance minister, is in the US. He's met Wilbur Ross. He, of course, comes from America Inc. He's had a long career in investment. He's been steel magnate. He also is known as the king of bankruptcy. He has a business background. Is there any chance that the Jaitley-Ross meeting could perhaps come out with something for India, or is the Trump protectionist streak going to last for a while and nobody can shake it? What's your thought on this?
Well, first of all, I think we have to understand that this is an important subject. I wrote a book a few years ago about economic engagement and the relationship to strategic cooperation between the U.S. and India. So this is not something which is just economic, but affects the relationship across the board. That having been said, I think that this meeting certainly will help. The fact is that this policy is really not formulated. If you look closely at this executive order, all it asks is that there be an interagency process to come up with suggestions for change from a lottery system to one involving the highest paid and most skilled workers. Now, to be able to do that, President Trump can't do that by himself. What has to happen is that the Congress has to be involved. And once the Congress is involved, going to get a more rational, it seems to me, approach in terms of what the interests are of the United States, the interests of India, and how those things fit together. So yes, it's serious. It's something that we have to work out. India has its own protectionist kinds of trend. The United States has it. We have to be able to resolve this so that these two greatest democracies can continue to cooperate across the board.
All right. No, I understand your point, sir, and I understand the point about lotteries as well. The overwhelming understanding, I believe, in the Trump administration is the reason why they had to do this because of the overwhelming number of lotteries, which led to the feeling that perhaps this was an actual lottery and more people who didn't really deserve a job in the U.S. were getting in. Now, having said that, I just quickly want to move across the panel to P.N. Vijay. And speaking of India's own protectionist policies, as Raymond Vickery termed it, today Nirmala Sitharaman, our Commerce Minister, I wouldn't call it a veiled threat, but made her stand very clear that India won't take anything that is not in India's interest lying down, and this has to be studied further, or India could respond as well. Do you believe that the Jaitley visit is to prevent exactly that the fact that the executive order has come into force, but the Congress, as Raymond says, will have to be involved. It's not all doom and gloom, but this could lead us down to a path which would clearly affect Indian IT companies and many other jobs and sectors.
Well, surely the impact on at least the top Indian companies would be significant, though I wouldn't say that it will take them down the tubes. My own calculation is about 10% of the top line would be affected, and considering that these companies are extremely profitable, TCS reported more than 6,000 crores of profits just last quarter, I think they would survive. Their cash-rich companies, so I don't expect, for example, NPAs out of that. But having said that, it's a serious issue. There's an issue of jobs. And let's not forget that it's not the first time the Americans have been protectionist. They did it in a rather very strong way with our Indian steel imports. They did it with the Indian garments. Now, to be honest, Trump has been saying as part of his election campaign that buy American, hire American, so he's following through. I think India is in a great position right now to engage with the Americans, because unlike other nations who have turned very protectionist, we saw Australia talk about 457, UK has been turning protectionist, and France is likely to be very protectionist and so forth. India, on the other hand, has been opening up almost daily for investments, for defense supplies, for nuclear power plants, etc., etc. So India has a right to call Ross and his colleagues and even Trump and tell him, hey, listen, we are going down the path of multilateralism. Why don't you guys follow suit? You are the guys who championed multilateralism and GATT for the last 25 years. And today, when a developing nation like India wants to join,
Vijay, if I could just come in for 1 second here, because you mentioned that point, my other question, of course, central to our theme tonight is whether or not the globalist order, or the so-called globalists, are they on the wane across the world, especially in the US, given the political scenario across the world here? Do you think the globalist tendencies, the free market, as well as the exchange of goods and services, do you think that's coming under some sort of pressure now, globally, not just in the US?
Asking me?
Yes, P. and Vijay.
Yes, yes, most certainly. We are seeing that as a very major global phenomenon, and it's very sad. Probably the advanced nations are reeling under Chinese imports, etc. But let's not forget that the Indian argument is compelling. We are sending highly skilled workers. On an overall basis, the American economy is gaining substantially. Somebody said IBM has more than 150,000 people in India, and if technically India shut down IBM's operations in India, it will have to shut down within 24 hours. Okay. So Americans also have a lot of stake in their IT investments in India, but it's very sad because after a long time the whole world is committed to multilateralism, and here are the champions of multilateralism who are backing out very unilaterally and starting their own bilateral agreements.
Madhav, Nalapat, the fact that the executive order has been passed, although it will take some time to really restructure norms and visa regulations, as Raymond put it, there are some other options that experts have been suggesting that Indian workers try to get, especially the EB-5 and the L1 visa. Now, the EB-5, of course, you need money for that, so techies are ruled out. You have to invest in America to get that. The other one, of course, is also an employment visa, but this is going to affect top lines, as P. and Vijay mentioned. But also, today we are seeing the effects almost immediately. Wipro fired 500 employees, nearly 500 employees. They called it an appraisal process, but clearly some tremors being felt here in India as well already, especially after New Zealand and Australia followed suit.
Well, I wouldn't say that Wipro has done this because of this H1B problem, and we have a very able lawyer in Arun Jaitley. Let's hope Arun Jaitley has been able to convince the American side to look at this policy and to dilute some of its harsher elements. I just want to point out that I'm afraid this policy of President Trump has been based on completely wrong premises. First premise is that jobs are lost in America. That's not true. Several times more jobs. According to some estimates, 9 to 13 times more jobs are created in America because of the Indians going there and creating software, better facilities, and improving the IT industry and the services industry in that country. So it's not true that India is taking away jobs. India is actually adding to jobs in the United States. And the second point, of course, is that I mean, this anti-globalization thing forgets the fact that all these countries are heavily dependent on foreign markets. Take India. India is going to buy, in a reasonably short period of time, about 500 aircraft from Boeing. Supposing India decides, okay, you don't want our software, we don't want your Boeings. In that case, what's going to happen? So this is instead of win-win, it becomes lose-lose.
And I think
so I
Nirmala
certainly
Sitharaman
hope that the Trump
hinted at that today.
administration
Professor Nalapat, I
understands
think
that
Nirmala
and
Sitharaman's
listens to
statement
its own
today
industry. Its
was
own
perhaps
industry
indicative.
is against these measures.
Madhav, Nalapat, Nirmala Sitharaman's statement today was perhaps indicative exactly of what you're trying to get at. She, of course, said today that India would be forced to perhaps take measures if this goes through clearly. Now, that could just be posturing right now. But I just want to quickly go across to Raymond Vickery. Raymond Vickery, as far as Professor Nalapat's statement here, argument is concerned, that the notion that countries like India, or workers, skilled workers coming in from countries like India into the US actually steal jobs away from American residents. The thinking on the other side doesn't really seem to be that currently. Also add to that the fact that a Democrat by the name of Zoe Lofgren has sought to increase the minimum salary of H1B visa holders to $130,000 per year to the current minimum of $60,000 per year. Are such proposals, even though it's a private member's bill in the US House, adding to that particular notion that the more foreign immigrant workers come in, the more Americans are out of jobs? Is that fueling the beast?
Well, I think Mr. Nalapat, of course, is exactly right, and the argument has to be around the job creation. Unfortunately, NASCOM and some others have not always emphasized job creation in the United States and have talked in terms of, well, U.S. needs India more than India needs the U.S. And that's exactly the wrong approach to be taking with the United States Congress. The focus has to be on job creation. It is a win-win situation if done properly. So that is the very key point. Now, it is absolutely true that this is not just a Trump phenomenon. There are Democrats as well. I'm a Democrat. I'm very much for free trade, but there are people in our party who have the same kind of concern. What they do is they seize on particular instances like the Disney situation, in which allegedly there was a force by the Disney company on existing employees to train H1B visa holders, and they got fired. Well, I think that you need to debunk that kind of sob story, if you will, and get really the benefit on both sides if done right. And we don't want to get into a kind of trade war. But I make the point again that these matters are very closely connected to strategic matters. It's not going to be possible for us to have the cooperation in terms of keeping the hegemon China in a rule of law, cooperating on terrorism, if we don't get the trade relationship right.
Okay.
I think it's important, but it's something we can't overcome.
Raymond, I have very limited time, but I'm going to ask you one more question before I go back to P and Vijay. I think I have enough time for that. Now, last night, in fact, I saw, if you look at the commentary on the right in your country, a gentleman by the name of Tucker Carlson was interviewing Mark Cuban, who's a multi-billionaire, and there were arguments for and against continuing with the current H1B visa traditions here. Now, do you think there is an overwhelming belief on the right amongst Republicans, people who support Donald Trump in the administration outside of it, that no matter what, politically, they have to make such decisions, execute such decisions, if they are to retain the political capital that Donald Trump came to power with? It's a very blunt question, I know, but you can answer at your own convenience.
Well, I don't think that that's for argument. I think that there are people out there in Donald Trump's supporters who want to see us put up the walls, bring up the drawbridges, completely cut the United States off from the rest of the world. Unfortunately, the last election was sort of like a plane wreck. A lot of things came together on that. And there are a lot of people who are in the Republican Party who are sound and who understand these kinds of trade-offs. And I think it's important, again, to recognize that what President Trump has said cannot be done without Congress.
All right,
and,
all right. All right, Raymond, I'll have to stop you there. Vijay, I'll give you the closing last word on this. India, of course, like Professor Nalapat said, has an able lawyer, Mr. Jaitley, who's currently negotiating with Mr. Ross and company. What else can the government really do to allay the fears that skilled, highly skilled foreign workers, Indian workers in this particular case, are really adding to the American economy, not really taking away jobs? What else can the government do at a policy level, at a diplomatic level?
Well, apart from forcefully pointing out that the Indian IT sector has been a very positive influence to the American economy on the whole, I think we will surely be pointing out to the Trump administration the bigger picture. We are about the only country that is totally in line with America's thinking on the role of China in Asia Pacific, on the role of the spread of terrorism, and we are bang on with Trump. And I think India will surely point out the bigger geopolitical picture. And I can tell you one thing, we are in with the Americans for the long haul. I don't think the H1B visa imbroglio will, even if it goes a bit adverse against us, will in any way affect the strong Indo-US relationship.
All right, let's hope both countries now can overcome this minor bump, and hopefully this remains a minor bump and doesn't really escalate into anything more serious. Thank you, Raymond Vickery, for joining us via Skype from the United States. Professor Madhav, Nalapat and P.N. Vijay, lovely speaking to you again. We have some breaking news coming in related to the US and the President. US President Donald Trump has just signed a memorandum launching a Commerce Department investigation into whether excessive steel imports are affecting national security in the United States of America. Now, the memorandum states that U.S. and global markets for steel products have been distorted by large volumes of excess capacity, and U.S. efforts to encourage other countries to reduce and address causes of excess capacity in steel market have had little effect. It calls for an investigation into the import of goods, its effect on foreign competition in steel, the steel sector, and whether excessive steel imports have resulted in unemployment or loss of skills or investment in the United States of America. My colleague Geeta Mohan is joining us now to walk us through what the memorandum said, how it could affect the relationship as far as it being in the sector of steel is concerned. Remember, Donald Trump's administration has been asked a bunch of questions about excessive reliance on Russian steel. Makes me wonder what this executive order is really about. But now, Geeta Mohan joins us. Geeta, take us through this news story.
Well, the big news coming in is from the United States of America after the H1B visa policy and a rechange and a review of that policy. Now, the U.S. president has gone ahead and signed a memorandum on imports of steel, making it very stringent for the United States of America to import steel. What is it that we're looking at over here is how it's going to impact India. 16% of India's steel export goes to the United States of America, and then after to UAE, Hong Kong and China. That's the amount that we're looking at, $41.99 billion of trade that happens between India and the United States of America could be impacted by this new memorandum. What is the memorandum really? Now, the United States President, in a statement after signing the memorandum, spoke about it, and we listened into it. But before that, this is what the memorandum talks about. In terms of policy decisions, memorandum says that United States and global markets for steel are distorted by large volumes of excess capacity, much of which results from foreign government subsidies and unfair practices. United States has placed more than 150 anti-dumping and countervailing duty orders on steel products. Repeated efforts made by the United States to encourage other countries to reduce and address causes of excessive capacity in steel market have had little effect. Also goes on to say that in conducting this investigation and in accordance with Section 232 and of the Act, of the Trade Act, the United States Commerce Secretary shall go ahead and investigate this entire matter of how steel is imported into the United States of America and what's the kind of stringent rules that are going to apply. Investigate import of goods as it affects U.S. industries to meet national security requirements. also goes on to talk about how the effect of foreign competition in steel industry could impact domestic markets, going on to consider any unemployment resulting from excessive steel imports, as also consider any loss of skills or investment resulting from excessive steel imports. Let's listen into what the President of the United States of America had said.
I'm directing the Department of Commerce to immediately prioritize the investigation. It began yesterday and really long before that, because Wilbur and I have been working on this for a long time. From now on, we're going to stand up for American jobs, workers, their security, and for American steel companies and companies generally. Today's action is the next vital step toward making America strong and prosperous once again.
That was Donald Trump reacting after signing that memorandum, which is also going to launch an investigation under the Commerce Secretary, who of course made his fortune in steel, just pointing that out. Also reactions coming in now on the memorandum ordered by the US. The Chinese spokesperson have stated that they would seek more information from the US government on the scope of the probe, while maintaining that friction in relations may arise. That may arise could be sorted through dialogue. Classic Chinese speak for more diplomacy. Let's take a look.
首先，我们还需要看到，如果说报道属实，我们需要看到这个美国政府它具体发布的这个调查范围和它的指向到底是什么，才能做出一个具体的一个评判。如果说你问这个问题是关心可能其中涉及到中美之间的一些贸易摩擦，我现在只能给你是个大的原则，就是我们一直说过，中美双方两国经贸关系发展到现在，它本质上是互利共赢的。那么双方即便有一些经贸领域的一些摩擦，这么多年实际上双方通过在相互尊重、平等互利的基础上进行磋商、协商，也都得到了比较好的解决。我相信对这个问题也同样是能够得到很好解决的。
Interesting memorandum there. And just a word on what we were discussing before that breaking news, as far as H1B visas are concerned, and this particular order that's just been signed, the memorandum by Donald Trump, the protectionist streak, as I mentioned at the beginning of the program, could be extended and could perhaps last longer than India would hope. I've been Athar Khan. Have a good night.